I made a video several weeks ago where I was talking about these tariffs that Trump wants to implement. If Trump was to implement tariffs the way I think he should, it would not have any effect on the economy or your pocketbook. As a matter of fact, your pocketbook would probably do better. No, it won't. It'll raise inflation. Maybe, if he does it wrong. But if he does it correctly, then no, it won't raise inflation. So a tariff, I'm sure everybody knows what a tariff is, but for those who don't, I'll explain it, was actually widely used in the early 1900s. It was a good way to collect revenue. And it actually brought us out of the first, not the Great Depression, but there was a kind of a depression before that. And it brought us out of a depression by raising tariffs. It brought in revenue and gave more money back to the people who were being taxed on sales in a state where you don't have income tax. So they make money through sales tax and property tax, or at least sales tax. Well, sales tax is a really good way to collect revenue for a state. And it does not put a barrel of a gun to a person's head to make them pay it. If you want to go out and buy a $50,000 car, but you don't want to pay the sales tax on that, then you'll go out and buy a $20,000 car. So the sales tax would be less. It's just like looking for a better interest rate when you're going to get a loan. You're looking for the best interest rate. Well, the same thing. You're looking for the best tax rate that you can get. So it's all part of the equation on how much you can afford to buy. Maybe the $50,000 and the $20,000, when I said it was too big of a range, maybe $20,000 or $50,000 in a $40,000 vehicle would be a better range, because let's say you had $50,000, for example, but once you added the sales tax and the interest and all that, you are no longer able to buy it. So or even if you're just paying cash and forget about the interest. But if you bought a $40,000 car, then you could afford the sales tax, so you buy the $40,000 car. And no one put a gun to your head. You didn't have to buy the car. You bought a used car. You didn't buy the big car. You bought the littler car. So you had some decisions to make, choices to make, which makes us a freer nation. But when you collect an income tax, the only way to get out of paying an income tax is don't work. Well, you got to work. You got to have money. Or be poor. And you get down to a threshold, like I think it's, I don't know, $15,000 or something. So you make $15,000 a year, you don't have to pay taxes. So I guess you can get to that point. But at that point, I mean, it's not really a choice. You're starving to death, or you have a gun pointed to your head. And when I say you have a gun pointed to your head, you literally have a gun pointed to your head. Imagine not paying your taxes. You tell the government, I'm not paying it. So the police show up to your door with guns drawn saying you're going to pay taxes, or the IRS. Somebody's going to come who has a gun to force you to pay or remove your freedoms from you. That's the only way to collect income tax. There is no choice involved. You have no decision making in that. You just do it. So you get rid of the income tax, and now all of a sudden they don't have the power to make you pay what they want you to pay. And I want to interrupt this video for a second and ask you if at the end of this video there'll be an up next box. Appreciate it if you go over there and watch the video for my new channel. And we'll learn something I'm sure you're going to find useful in the future. Lots of people are enjoying this, and I'm only a few hours away from being able to monetize that channel. I'd really appreciate it if you go over there and help me out. I'm under the impression that we should get rid of the IRS, and I think Trump has proposed this idea. So that means if he implements tariffs, he's on the right path of implementing tariffs without raising inflation, because he's letting you keep your money that you were being taxed on. But what about my check at the end of the year, that refund I get? It's not a refund. You're not being refunded anything. That's your money. They took it away from you all year long, put it in a bank, collected interest on it, made more money off your money, and then gave you some money back because you overpaid. I think last time Trump was in office, he reduced the amount you had to pay in, so that meant you got less back at the end of the year, but you got to keep more of your money throughout the year. Well, when nobody got their checks at the end of the year, everybody was up, oh my gosh, I didn't get my money back. Trump's killing us with taxes. No, you should have taken that money that you save throughout the year, put it into a savings account or a CD or something, make some interest off of it, and then when the government says, oh, you owe a little extra, oh, okay, well, I got it right here in my bank. You'd have had it. But nobody thinks that way. They just get a big check at the end of the year and thinks the government is their big savior. No, they took money away from you with the threat of a gun being pointed to your head, and then said, okay, we're going to give you some of this money back now that we've made money on your money. Thanks, come again. And they do it year after year. Then you have to pay some software company or some tax company to do your taxes. Now, some people will do them on your own, don't get me wrong. Some people can figure out how to do it on paper still, and that's all great, but you know, I'm going to get somebody in the comment section, you don't have to pay. Yes, I know, you can even go to the IRS website and get it, but most people will pay. So there's a huge industry for you to go and pay someone to do your taxes, and then you pay someone, the IRS, to collect your money. So you're paying all these people so they can take your money away from you. Oh, this is a genius idea. Genius, it's just brilliant. Because they got a gun to your head. Everybody loves the IRS. How dare Trump take away the IRS? No, let's get rid of the IRS. Get rid of the IRS and either do tariffs, which is fine. I mean, it's going to raise prices on goods coming in, and other countries are going to hate us, and oh, that's terrible. Canada never did anything to us. Well, except they put tariffs on us. Why is it that we have to pay tariffs and they don't? So anyway, we could either do it through tariffs or we can do it through sales tax. And I think that is a great option, sales tax. Then I still have a choice to pay taxes. If I want to go out and buy a new boat, then I'm going to pay a tax on that new boat. Or I can be poor like I am and just not pay for a new boat. But of course, the government isn't going to make as much money. Great, that's perfect. Then the government can learn how to tighten their belts just like we do and spend money on things that we actually want. Well, the only way we have the military that we have is because of income taxes. We'd have never had the military if hadn't had income taxes. Yes, we would have. How did George Washington defeat the largest navy and army in the world and he never got paid? If you look at history, they struggled through an entire winter without any pay. So yeah, you can make money with sales tax. The thing is people are going to have more money because right now, somebody points a gun to your head and says you have to pay money to me. I'm going to hold your money for a year. I'm going to make interest on it, and then at the end of the year, I'm going to give you some money back, and then tell you, oh yeah, go out and buy something. That'll help the economy. Well, if they'd just let you keep your money, put it in the savings account, you'd have reduced inflation because you'd have been making interest instead of spending interest. That'd have reduced inflation. Your dollar would have went further when you went to the grocery store. The government would have actually made more money in the long run on sales tax because you're buying things. You have money to buy. I told you this in yesterday's video. If you lower federal income tax, just 10%. Let's just say it's 10%. So if you have $100, that's all you have, and you go out and spend that $100 and there's a 20% tax on it, then the government just made 20 bucks off of you. But if you have more money in your pocket because they just lowered the interest rate, let's say they lowered it to 10%, now you have $1,000 in your pocket. I'm just doing this for easy math. Now you have $1,000 in your pocket because you're saving money, not having to pay that extra 10%, so you got extra money in your pocket. So you go out and spend that $1,000. The government just made $100. So lowering taxes actually produces more revenue. So if you did a sales tax, you're actually collect more revenue. It's a hard concept, and politicians just don't get it. Yesterday, I kept calling it a Lafferty curve. It's actually called the Lafferty curve. I couldn't pronounce it right yesterday in yesterday's video, but it's called the Lafferty curve. And it worked back in the 80s. If you'll remember, our grandparents had a lot of money in the bank. At least the ones I knew had a lot of money in the bank. It's because all you had to do is put money in a savings account. You're making 5, 10, 15, 20% sometimes on these checking accounts, the savings accounts, is my understanding. Well, now if you can find a checking or savings account with 3% interest, you're doing really good. I mean, a simple savings account. So, I mean, if you put in CDs, and you got to be real strategic nowadays, and you got to put it in the stock market, you got to diversify. But Grandma and Grandpa, they just put it in the savings account. I remember Grandma going over to the Eagle Bank. It just seemed like she was always at Eagle Bank depositing money. That's because they lowered the tax rate, giving people more money, lowering inflation. Instead of having credit cards to pay interest on, people were saving money, making interest. It's my understanding, and I don't know, I mean, it's just something I heard, but something that you should consider, something to think about, that today's people are making less money and spending more money on necessities than the people in the Great Depression. But we don't call what we have today a depression. Oh, this is a good economy. We're not even in a recession right now. But people in the Depression were doing better than we are today because we're overtaxed. I mean, this is simple economics. Well, it's not simple economics. I did poorly in economics. Anything that had to do with accounting and economics, I didn't do that well in college. But I did learn enough to know that when you tax somebody, they have less money to spend into the economy. And the government just steals your money. So I would suggest that you allow these tariffs to go through. Look, people are going to try to scare you that it's going to raise inflation. What I don't understand is, why do we want to keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results? Congress is really upsetting me right now. I made a video a while back. Congress wants to reduce mandatory spending. Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, and Veterans Affairs. I made a video about this. And I'm getting tons of people in the comment section calling me a liar. They're not going to do that. Trump said. Well, Trump's only part of the equation. Remember, there's three branches of government. First of all, you got Congress. And Congress doesn't like what Trump is doing. He said, I don't want to touch mandatory spending. What did they do? They went and touched mandatory spending. The only thing Trump can do is veto that. Somebody got in the comment, called me a liar, and said, Trump's going to raise Social Security. What are you talking about? Trump doesn't have the authority to raise Social Security. That's illegal. It's got to go through Congress. No, they're going to have to go through Congress, and Congress just isn't playing ball. And people's knowledge of how government works is strange to me. Why do we have a Congress and a Senate if they don't do anything? And so they're going to sit on their hands, and watch Trump flounder, trying to make the economy better. Here's the thing about the IRS. If he does a flat tax, or not a flat tax, sales tax or a tariff, then he's going to have to go to Congress, and Congress is going to have to say, okay, we only want to bring in this much revenue. Because the 16th Amendment was ratified, I think in 1913 or 1918, I forget which, 1916 maybe. Let's split in the middle, say it's 1916. It was just a few weeks or months before Woodrow Wilson came into office. I think it was Howard Taft, maybe was the president. I don't know, I probably have that wrong too. He was pushing for an income tax. This was a progressive movement back in the early 1900s, and they got 40-something states to ratify it. So it was a huge margin. And they claim that's why we're the most powerful country in the world, is because of the income tax. But if we look at the income tax, it's no different than what the kings would do. I mean, even in the primitive era, medieval era, Robin Hood era, kings would just come around and collect a tax. They knock on the door, tax collector, and you would have to pay the tax. And if you didn't, you went to jail. And people were always poor. The king was rich. He got to go to war, collect more land for the nobles. But the people were always poor. People separated, came to the United States. Okay, taxation without representation is bad. And now we have taxation without representation because bureaucrats spend our money. They just keep taxing us more. They determine who's going to be taxed and who's not going to be taxed. You know, if you had a sales tax, people will say, well, that's not fair. The poor, we got to exclude the poor from a flat tax, or, well, no. 10% of $100. Let's say a poor person only makes $100. 10% is $10 or $1. Let's say a poor person makes $1. That's 10 cents. So they don't get taxed any differently than the billionaire. It's 10%. That's a flat tax. So sales tax, the poor isn't going to be able to go out and buy a yacht, but it's all fair. And it puts capitalism back into play. Right now, people say capitalism is bad. We don't have capitalism in this country. Even though people say we do, we don't. We have crony capitalism. Crony capitalism is when government gets involved with capitalism. We basically have a hybrid socialist system here in the United States. Government decides who succeeds and who fails. They tax one party more than the other. Right now, it's been this way for a long time. Small business and self-employed people are taxed higher than corporations. So it's crony capitalism. Walmart gets a benefit because they donate money to a campaign, or whoever. So if we can get away from allowing government to determine who's going to be taxed and who's not going to be taxed by the barrel of a gun, and we say, okay, we're just going to tax all of the countries with a tariff, or we're going to do a sales tax, people get choices then. Am I going to buy that new car? Am I going to buy that junk from China? It's a choice. So if you'll click this up next box, it'll take you to a video on my new channel. And I appreciate it if you go over there and watch it. We're getting really close to having enough watch hours. So if I can inspire you to learn a little history, signal of your dreams. Thanks for watching.